I'm excited today to host this panel. My name's Lamarck Palvido. I am a founder of a couple of companies, but the most important title I have in this setting is I'm a dad of a 24-year-old who has severe autism. And when she was diagnosed, we were handed a sheet of paper with autism at the top and a lot of the stats at the bottom, and the doc just walked out without one referral. And that was the moment that I became both an advocate and an active part of this community. And today we're going to be talking about mission readiness starts with reform, fixing EFMP to cut waste, protect families, and improve resilience. We have a wonderful panel today, and we're excited to have all of you. We view all of you in this webinar as collaborators. So thank you for coming to the webinar to hear what our panelists have to say today. But also, I want to encourage you to persistently join us in this effort to collaborate and improve the services that are delivered to our military families. We'll talk a lot about that today. Today, I've got four very distinguished panelists. I've got Randy Wells, Air Force veteran and intelligence professional, but most importantly, like me, EFMP parent. So he has that experience of what is it like to live inside the program with a loved one who has special care needs. As well as we have Jessica Holter, who is a massive champion, military spouse, caregiver, and was a caregiver to a daughter with Rett syndrome who's enrolled in EFMP. Jessica, we're very, very excited to hear from you today. Chuck Milam, former acting deputy assistant secretary of defense for military and community and family policy. So very good perspective there, Chuck. Thank you for joining us. And Tony Cucolo, CEO of PCSI and retired U.S. Army Major General with 35 years of service. And so you came today to hear from people with a very large amount of experience directed in real life, real lived experience in and around this program and several different perspectives. I want to talk just for a second about the ever expanding universe of data. We started collaborating about a year ago and starting talking to other organizations about the need for data. And one of the things that one of my companies does, Feedback, is digital ethnography. And I'm just sharing this slide really to help you understand how much data has already been touched. And over the next 3 years, we're going to be sharing different aspects of this data set, but it is a universe of data. It's the largest data set that we are aware of for any military population. And again, you think about the size and scope of the program today is roughly 9 to 10%, at least the official members in the program. And so understanding human behavior in three different ways. Internal, think of that as Pentagon to an E1. How do they think, act, feel, and behave around this program? So when I say digital ethnography, I'm talking about real human experience data in and around a program. That internal lens, looking at the uniform side of the services and how they interact and behave around the program. External is going to be your members. So we have two members today, Randy and Jessica, who will be sharing their lived experience in and around the program. And so that's important. And then the final lens is what we call landscape. And that's providers. If you're a provider on this call and you are actively serving, you're in the TRICARE network and you maybe are serving families who have special care, healthcare needs, this is for you. You are part of that ecosystem. And we want you to not only attend these webinars that are going to be happening over the next 3 years, but we want to invite you to the table, and we'll do that at the end. We want to collaborate with you and hear your challenges as a provider. And so those three components is what is making up kind of this push for us of, do we have everyone at the table, and let's talk about the real issues. And the last thing I just want to point out about the universe of data is this. Last year, Feedback did a really cool study. It was a partnership between the Association of Defense Communities and also Five and Thrive. And what we did is we applied the Five and Thrive framework to the data set for quality of life. And what was fascinating about this study that I don't think anybody expected, at least on my team, was that the number two takeaway of that study is that the EFMP program is the canary in the coal mine. It is the leading indicator of issues that must be solved for the total force. So the learning here is that if we don't understand and we can't really transform EFMP and make it accessible and make sure that families are accessing many types points of care over their years as a member, this is a big deal. If we can't do that, we're not going to understand how to innovate for the total force and to help them. And I could spend a lot of time talking about that. But now I just want to dive in real quick here to the panel. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Panel, thank you so much for your time today. And let's get right into it. So, the first thing that I wanted to talk about is just kind of, you know, what is the lived experience with EFMP on the family side? And Jessica and Randy, this is you. What is the lived experience from the member or the caregiver of the member? And so please share a little bit of your story so we have context and help us understand your lived experience on the program side as a member.
I'll go first, Jess. Yeah, thanks for having us today, Lamarck and team. So for me, I served 20 years in the Air Force as an intel specialist, as Lamarck mentioned. Early on in my career, my oldest son was born with corneal atresia, and basically had to go through extensive surgeries to repair his nasal passageways. It ended up being a learning disability tied to that. And so at the onset of the being put into EFMP at the time, it really provided a lot of great care for my child. It was very, direct and appropriate, and we were very appreciative of it. What ended up impacting us as a family is more of the administrative side of things and the codings, making sure at the time I was married to another Air Force member. So one of us had received the codings and the other, wasn't Q coded at the time. And what that did to our family is it ended up giving me an assignment to Europe and leaving my family back in the States. And that's something we try to avoid in the military, keeping military families together, making sure that the care is provided, but also the needs of the family are met, and also the needs of the service. So that was early 2000s. My third child also is EFMP. And I will say the process was a lot more deliberate because I knew myself how to navigate those waters as a senior military individual. But early on, as a junior military member, I didn't have the knowledge or understanding of how to navigate EFMP. So that's kind of my story.
Yeah, that's very, very helpful. And I came to this space really with a large amount of experience in the civilian space. And Randy, what I can tell you is that if I told a mom who is not in the military, who does not move on average every 2 years, that I wanted her or the main caregiver to move every 2 years and start over coordinating with care, I would have no teeth left in my mouth. I mean it's that affronting. And so what we're asking families like yours to do is incredibly hard. It's not just the program, it is moving. Think about wiping that slate clean every 2 years. And I can speak from experience with my daughter how much effort it takes just to get one network of care set up, let alone a new network of care every couple of years. So with that, Jessica, I'd love to hear your lived experience and see kind of how you view your experience in the program and share with your thoughts there.
Sure. So I was a young lady when I had my daughter. Uh, this was 2005, and she did not have an easily identifiable disability. So that means that we went through several years, almost 2 years of diagnostic process before we were enrolled in the Exceptional Family Member Program. And initially, when we were enrolled, when she was finally received a diagnosis and enrollment, we were over the moon. We were so excited. I had a lot of assumptions about what that meant. I thought that it meant respite care would just appear. I thought that it meant case navigation would be available to us, and that we would genuinely be stationed together at locations that provided the medical services and the educational services and the therapeutic services that we needed. And over the ensuing 15 years, what we found was that there were countless really dedicated people working hours they didn't really document because they're working overtime, trying to help meet those needs. But that the program was largely unsuccessful at placing my family, at giving assignments that were going to be workable for us, and at keeping us together. And that was challenging for us and challenging for my spouse's relationship with the Air Force, and challenging for our whole family's relationship with each other, including eventually our younger son, who went through many transitions, being kind of a lesser child because there was so much administrative burden placed on caring for my daughter that he got a little bit swept up in the wake of that and kind of just had to tag along wherever he was sent. That didn't do him any favors either.
Yeah, so both of you are describing, a very challenging environment. And again, when I say that, I'm not talking about the program. I'm talking about coordinating care in and around that. And one of the things that is clear already in this, just the two of you responding to this webinar and to that first question, is what we see in the data set. We see in the data set large amounts of behavior that describe this tug of war, if you will, between I'm serving the military in whatever branch, and I have a family member or a spouse Q coded EFMP, and there's this personal tug of war between my career and where we need to go and what we need to do and what the family needs. And we call that dynamic tension, right? This is something that's very hard to solve for. And I want to take that thought of that dynamic tension and move it over to our next panelist just real quick. And so Chuck is no stranger to dynamic tension. And Chuck, you and I have been in quite a few different environments where we are talking to leaders, or when I first came to see you in 2016 and was learning about the program, and we were, asking each other questions like, "Hey, Lamarck, what does this look like in the civilian space, and why are you so passionate about solving it?" And this is what we're challenged with on the military side. But can you talk about a little bit about the dynamic tension as a senior leader? Between the program, we've got on one hand, we've got the troops and we've got the families and quality of life, and we know that's important. But there is that with undeniable dynamic tension. Maybe share from your perspective what that looked like from a seat at the Pentagon running a program, and just share your experience there. We'll start with you, and then we'll go to Tony and let him share kind of the operational side in
Sure.
uniform.
Thank you, Lamarck, and thank you for the opportunity to be on today's panel. So my experience and my role was somewhat unique. I had oversight over the EFMP program for both the Air Force as the Director of Services, and then in the DoD, I was actually the director of the EFMP program, as Congress needed a senior executive to lead that role. So, but also the dad of a special needs son, who's now 19 years old, and a military spouse. So when you put those three together, it made everything quite challenging. I was torn because I had oversight of this program and was, getting feedback from surveys, my staff, that we had a solid program that, was effective, but my experiences weren't the same. So I, certainly wanted to support my team and everything that we were doing, but, firsthand, after my wife deployed for the first time, and I'm trying to, take care of my special needs son, also be a senior executive at the Pentagon, was quite challenging. And it really, Lamarck, it wasn't until I had to testify before Congress and on our program, and I laid out all the wonderful things that we were doing and how effective we were with the EFMP program. It wasn't until the family program, the family panel, came up after me to testify to say that their experiences were completely different. So my challenge there was trying to weigh, what we thought we were doing to what we were actually delivering, and the effectiveness of the program. I say often now that I've left, my role at the Pentagon, I wish I knew then what I know today on, what's available and, how we can make improvements to the program and be more effective. Like Randy, I had to navigate a lot of these things on my own. My wife had to navigate these things on my own as we moved from one base to the next, starting over again on waiting lists. Same experiences that Jessica had. But again, my role was somewhat unique in that I was the guy running the program, but also had a special needs son and was an Air Force spouse. So you put those things together, my perspective is somewhat unique. But it also opened my eyes to the fact that we do need reform. We need to take a hard look and deep dive into this program and figure out where we can make it more effective and more efficient.
Yeah, so Chuck, I'm glad you're bringing up dynamic tension in data sets. This is something that again is very common as many of you that are watching this webinar, spend your time advocating, talking to legislators, talking to senior leaders, and there is often a very large gap between the internal data that the Pentagon stakeholder or a branch of service stakeholder has, and our data set that's out in the wild looking at actual behavior. And so there's dynamic tension in data. And that makes it very challenging. And Chuck, I would say, if you could take you back in a time machine to the first time that you testified on this program and you met some of the caregivers and advocates that you and I now know and work with on, as much as humanly possible. How shocking was that to you? Like, I'm sure that had to be an interesting moment as a leader who, and I know you quite well now, didn't know you at all in 2016, but you're one of the few leaders that after your post, you've stuck around to say, hey, this needs to be fixed. Can you talk about that moment in time and like how challenging that was for you as a leader who absolutely wants to improve the program and believed that that was happening, but yet there's these experiences that you can't account for. So over to you on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I felt something was off. Obviously, I had to be supportive of our program, but I felt something was off in that I personally wasn't experiencing the same level of support that we said we were providing, DoD, EFMP family members also throughout the services. And I don't want to say that it was all bad. I think that the services stepped up and there's pockets of goodness out there. We did do some good things. But in my heart, I felt like something was wrong. The data that I had, Lamarck, the survey data, if anyone knows how DoD surveys work, it takes about a year to get a survey approved. The survey itself takes about another year, and it takes about another 6-8 months to get it reported out. And so the data was not, to me, effective enough to reform the program. We need digital ethnography. We need to get that data at the ground level. We need to hear what EFMP families are saying, and we need to use that as a benchmark to affect change. That's the only way we're going to get at this. We cannot continue to look back. We have to look forward. We have to listen to families. And I wish I had done that back then. Again, I was using old survey information. I was listening to my own team, so I was part of that problem, I think. And I think today, looking back, I would have used a different element of a data set, that would have allowed me to make those changes back then and not wait until now.
Yeah, Chuck, that's such a great perspective. And this is why I'm so all in on data matters. We need more data. We need experiential data. We don't just need the quant data of this is how many folks we PCSed and this is what we did. And yes, that's important, but we need to marry that with the actual experience of that family unit once they get on post. And Tony, this is where I'd like to pull you in because you come at this from the uniform services side. You have a long and distinguished career. You're a leader's leader, a soldier for life. If I've heard you say that once, I'm pretty sure I've heard it 30 to 40 times, and I haven't known you more than a year. So that says a lot about you. But can you share from your perspective, what did you see and what is your experience from the command side?
Sure. Thanks, Lamarck. And for the listeners, I am unlike the other panelists. I do not have a special needs child. And yet I commanded two posts, Fort Stewart, Hunter Army Airfield, very large post outside of Savannah, Georgia, for 33 months, and then Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania, a small post, but with an interesting adult uniform and civilian population in Pennsylvania for 2 years. I also had 2 Pentagon tours that give me great empathy for what Chuck was describing. I was chief of public affairs for 2 years. And why does that matter? Well, that every morning it put me next to the Secretary of the Army, listening to the issues facing the Army and how do we communicate about them internally and externally. And then I had a tour as Director of Force Development. What does that mean? It means at the moment I was a co-chair for the program execution group that is the military equipping budget. So I co-chaired how do you spend $35 billion within the guidance from the secretary and the chief. So the dynamic tension that Lamarck is talking about and the I thought it was working this way, but it's not, that Chuck was talking about, I saw from the uniform side very quickly, from a base commander, from the senior mission commander on an installation. I am guilty of not understanding the problem. And I'm not making excuses, but when you're pressed, harried, you have limited time, and you depend on others' information, and you ask questions like, okay, tell me about EFMP. We have this office, and they are doing this. Okay, are they resourced? Yes, they are. Okay, good, moving on. And that was the limit of that's why I say I'm guilty. I did not try to establish a deep understanding of the complex problem of what the families were facing. I didn't ask all the right questions, and therefore I thought everything was fine. And it wasn't, and it isn't. And there's things we can do about it. And the other aspect of that is when you're busy and harried and you have to make a decision, sometimes confirmation bias creeps in. And if you do not know about the world of disability, confirmation bias will cause you to make incorrect decisions. 4 years ago, I took over this wonderful company here where I'm sitting right now, Professional Contract Services Incorporated. What we do is we enhance the lives of people with disabilities, primarily through employment, but also advocacy and partnerships. But the bottom line is, when I walked into this job, I did not know the level of my ignorance about disability. I mean, I thought Down syndrome was one diagnosis. And I could go on, but I am now surrounded by people who have taught me, and I have learned, and that further tells me how much I missed when I was a commander. Now, I say all this because I have incredible empathy for those leading right now. I understand the choices they have to make, both at the installation level and also at Chuck's Pentagon level. I mean, people seek efficiency. But I offer to you, what we ought to be thinking about is when it's the human factor, especially with a complex human issue like this, we need to go for effectiveness. And quite frankly, making the the Exceptional Family Member Program effective is not going to be that expensive, in my opinion. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Bottom line is there's great commanders out there who do not know the extent or the complexity of the problem. And if they did, I believe they would be pushing for different initiatives, different priorities at where they are. I'll turn it back to you, Lamarck.
What a great, so many great points I want to talk about. Where I want to go with what you just said, though, is there are good things happening. So sometimes when you look at a program that has challenges or is not, let's take, for instance, I've spent over 15 years in the Medicaid space in Texas with our high risk pool, right? Star kids is what they're called in Texas. These are the families who have very severe kids and the challenges they are having accessing care in a program that's designed to deliver care. There is the system issues, But I think we have to make sure we understand that all systems have issues, but there are good leaders. And those leaders need our support. And so on this webinar, I just want to take a moment to say, if you're on this webinar and you're here, I wore this shirt for you. We are looking for all types of stakeholders that are mission driven, whether you're internal to the program in the Pentagon or a branch of service now, or maybe you're just a member of the program or an active duty leader who cares. It takes everyone to make a difference. And that's where I want to go with our next question. And before I do that, I'm getting notes from our back office of the fact that I neglected to say, speaking of participation, we want your questions. So if you have a question, you have a comment, you can use the text stream or click Q&A. I don't know what is limited and what's turned on. I only have a certain view when I host a webinar, but I did see Half just call out and say, Half's here. Welcome, Half. That's a stakeholder we care about. We're glad you're here. And so whoever you are, whatever brought you to this webinar, we're not here to tell you how to count the cabbage. We're here to say, this team's committed and we're growing this team to collaborate, and we want you to collaborate with us. This is an open invitation. This isn't a secret club. And if you're a leader right now and you're doing something in this space and you're frustrated, or maybe you're frustrated with everybody talks about what's broken and not what's right, we want you. We want all of those perspectives along this journey. And so with that, I'm going to come back to a question for the panel because I will get on a soapbox in 2 seconds. But look, I want to talk about what's going right with the program. And along my journey, so I've been on this journey since 2016 when I met Chuck at the Pentagon, I have learned a lot. And what I've learned is in much the same way that special education has some very serious challenges, the people in the system are doing amazing work. And I want to make sure we talk about that because I have met some incredible champions. And what is fun about my job is I get to meet new champions every day. But I would like to hear from the panel, and I want to start with families. Jessica, we'll start with you. What are the things that you're seeing? Because there are efforts at a service level. I think there are efforts at a policy level that really are pushing on this problem. And we are not here to say, gosh, why can't these folks solve it? We're here to say, hey, we want to help you. We want to come alongside you. What can we do together? And what are you seeing out there, Jessica, that is a positive thing or something that you've said, hey, if this can happen, if we can double down on it, if you will, these are the things that give me hope when I get up in the morning. Okay, I'll shut up now. And Jessica, hit us with your best shot, as Pat Benatar says, and we'll kick it off from there.
I want to start very simply with one of the members of this panel and call out Tony, who says very humbly, I don't have a family member in the program. And I want to call your attention to the people in leadership who every day, they don't get sucked into this or told they're doing this. They volunteer to navigate a system that is so incredibly complex and frustrating because they see that need. That's heroism here at home, is saying, yes, I will sign up. I didn't do that. I wanted to talk about French literature. I ended up here in advocacy. And some people choose this space. And they do that every single day. And there are active leaders from first shirts to base commands who do exactly that. They show up every day. They don't get told they have to. And they really put a vested effort into helping families who have situations like mine, situations like Randy's. And that is my top line. What's going right? Those folks. They're everywhere. We come across them constantly. I will also say that we've had some wonderful policy changes. The directive to standardize EFMP across the branches is an exceptionally prescient and promising directive. And I really look forward to seeing that once it is completely implemented in place. I think that is going to be a tremendous benefit for the families. We also see every system, every branch implementing new technologies to attempt to standardize and improve the accuracy of things like assignments that really do hurt families directly on an individual basis. Getting those technologies in place will help those good people who show up really do an effective job at what they're trying to do, which is to service these families.
That's great, Jessica. Randy, I'm going to go to you next, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this. And what are you seeing that gives you hope and is promising for the future in and around EFMP?
Yeah, thanks. And Jessica made some great points. Kind of stole mine as well. I do think EFMP has transformed in many right ways. And for myself personally, and what I described in my story in early 2000s, there was a lot of self-navigation. And even though that still exists, I do think information is, and data that is accessible to service members is a lot better than it was in 2005 and in those days. So, and I think leaders are becoming more aware because, especially at the tactical levels, we understand we want to keep our service members around, especially those with specific skill sets. And we want to make sure they're informed and they're making the right decisions for their families. It is an area we can do better at, but I'm thankful that the discussion has led us to the 2025 version of what EFMP looks like, where we can actually teach people like, hey, now there's a tool you can go and see what type of care there is. That way, before the assignment cycle starts, you can go and check to make sure you're going to be able to bring your family along with you. So, and those are the types of things that need to change. So we're headed in the right direction. It's just getting those policies aligned with all the services and pick up key and best ideas that other services are doing that we can implement in other areas we're not doing it.
Yeah, agreed. I couldn't agree more. Jessica, you brought up something very interesting, which is the dynamic inadvertently. At least it brought it up in my head. Maybe I should say that. The rest of you might be like, how did he get there? But you talked a little bit, you touched on case management. And case managers are my people. These are the people that I love. These are people I believe can make the most amount of difference. And they're also the people that are usually the least equipped. In other words, they haven't been given very many tools. I'll speak to the civilian side of the world is a phone and a computer with an Excel list of providers that has not been updated. Like nobody can tell me when the last time it was updated. That is the tools at which often case managers are coming to the fight. And there's been an evolution there, but not nearly as much as I would like to see. But for me, the case managers are a great example of the heroes of the story who are caught between a rock and a hard place. And certainly we've seen that in the data sets where case managers are saying, I feel pulled in two directions. I am working for fill in the branch of service and for the EFMP, cell or whatever, but I'm also trying to do the right thing for families. And I'm not sure we can do that. I'm not sure that I have the data to connect this family to care. And that is, if you think of how passionate case managers are, and I've met some amazing case managers, that's a tough spot to be. And I think that's true also in leadership, where leaders are trying to get after this. And again, maybe don't have the right data, don't have the right tools to get something done. And Jessica, is there anything you want to add? And Randy, before we go to Chuck and Tony, I know as a family, I have very distinct memories of a moment where a case manager really did help me. Like, I wouldn't even say save the day, but take at least a breath before I hold it for another 10 minutes, which is sometimes what it feels like coordinating care. And they got me just enough oxygen, just enough psychological oxygen of, hey, there is a one provider that I can access that it got me through to that next thing. And so I don't know if either one of you would like to share about that, but I think that would be such a great thing. Randy, I'll let you go first since you raised your hand. Then I could tell Jessica's ready to talk too. You
Yeah, I
guys
wanted
have
to beat her
stories.
to that. She
Yeah,
stole my
good.
last
Well
one.
done. Yeah.
Yeah. So you bring up a great point, and I think in my service in particular, when I was serving the Air Force, I think records management was a huge hurdle for myself. And the Air Force doesn't do a deliberate update to EFMP records. It leaves it on the service members to kind of do that on their own. And so, for example, when I was Q coded because of my son's condition, he eventually grew out of that condition. He eventually, learned his learning disabilities improved to the point where he didn't need an IEP anymore, right? However, for 20 years, I was Q coded. And so getting that Q code removed was very difficult, and not everybody knew the process of doing that. So I think too there's a hindrance to service members. Not only getting in the program is a great thing and helping identify the needs for your family, but also when those needs are no longer needed, getting those away so there's a little bit more flexibility in the assignment process. Because that's where I was left off, and ultimately what caused me to to retire.
Yeah. And that's a critical point about retention that we'll talk about, I think, in a minute. Jessica, can you give me some thoughts? Because I know you've had those same experiences, but anything you'd like to share on that front?
Absolutely. I mean, I think case managers really are heroes in this field. I think what's going right is we hire military spouses and dependents into a lot of these positions, into installation positions. And what's going wrong is that those are military spouses and dependents, which means they did not grow up in that area. They don't know the local area often, and they move. And these compound to leave you with a case manager who very frequently does not have a deep working knowledge of services that are available off your base, off your post, the kind of local area services where you might be able to get something for free or supportive services or groups for parents. Those types of gaps in knowledge leave case managers specifically putting in a ton of extra hours trying to research these things and get up to speed about what the local ecosystem is, just so that they can give accurate feedback to families and also accurate feedback to the institutions they work for. And those institutions don't always want to hear that feedback. There is a lot of pressure to give agreeable feedback rather than accurate feedback. So I do think they are heroes, but I think we are pressing them harder than they deserve to be pressed. I think that these folks can be tremendously effective if we enable them with technologies that support working knowledge of the ecosystem they are working in, regardless of whether they've been there for a decade or just got into that position. And I think that we can empower them with data around what families are actually needing and what services are actually missing, then it will enable them to go back to the institutions they work for and give honest feedback without being in such a position of vulnerability.
Yeah, I think that's so critical. So I want to throw this over to Chuck and Tony and get a different perspective. So from a Pentagon point of view, from a leadership point of view, what are the things that you all see? And Chuck, I'll start with you that are going right, that are giving you hope for the future, and then I'll let both of you answer that, and then we'll open it up to kind of the last question here.
So I think we have an amazing team of people, both at the policy level and at the installation level, who want to do good. They want to improve this program. And even when I was at the Pentagon, I did see those pockets of goodness in individual services doing good things to make improvements to the programs. Like Jessica said, we have incredible case managers. We've got awesome coordinators out there. But this is going to take a village, right? One service, one base can't do this on their own. It would be great if we could share these best practices of some of these good things that have happened in the past. We have an incredible cadre of over 250,000, I think, EFMP families who are among the most resilient and resourceful people I've ever met. When I see the things that they have navigated to get the services for their family members, it's absolutely incredible. So they're part of our team, right? We cannot, make this program work without that resource. And I call them volunteers because each family contributes to making improvements, in this program. The other thing, Lamarck, and I don't know how we can share this, maybe in a follow-on panel, is there was an amazing demo done at Travis Air Force Base. And I reviewed that information and that data and the lessons learned, and it was absolutely incredible. Kudos to the Air Force, for stepping up to that demonstration project out at Travis. And I would love to share that with, this community, those who are on today. But we've made improvements, but we definitely have a long way to go.
Yes, and Chuck, good news for you and for the rest of our collaborators on this call, and some who probably couldn't make this call, is this is a persistent effort. This is not a one and done webinar. This is about us building and bringing different perspectives, making sure providers' voices are heard. There's a challenge, right? What are the challenge for providers serving? So there's all sorts of data that I'd love to dive into. I think the demonstration data would be great. I think there's a lot of other things that we can bring to bear over time, and different perspectives, because it takes all of those perspectives to create real change and real momentum. And that starts with people, not programs and policy. I know that oftentimes we've taken the DoD, well, we got to have policy. Well, yes, we do. And Tony, I'm teeing you up here. You do have policy, but that policy only matters if it actually somehow makes an impact for the member itself at a given base at a specific time of need. That is the gap between the intent and what's happening. So, Tony, over to you about positive things that get you excited on that front.
No, I'm not going to give you any positives. Okay. I'm sorry. That was just supposed to shock the system. Look, everybody has said all the right positive things right now. I'm going to duck your question. I'm going straight to, I am a strategically impatient man. And yes,
that's why we get along, Tony.
That's right. There's wonderful stuff going on, but when you get, yes, there's policy, then there needs to be signed accountability and responsibility and accountability. But then what is often left off is authority. And you've got to have the authorities at all the levels to make decisions, move resources, et cetera. And I think frankly, I think the main issue is a lack of shared understanding at the national level of the complexity of the problem. And we allow the services to go their own way. Now, yes, the Navy culture is different from the Army culture, different from the Air Force culture. I got it. But if you let the services go their own way to an extreme degree, when I am on my way to Stuttgart for my joint assignment, who's going to help? Who's going to help me with my child with special needs? Which service? Yeah. I'm Army, but anyway. You understand? I mean, it gets really complex at the tip of the spear, and so the shared understanding has to start at the top, and the people at the top will understand where to place responsibility, accountability, and to whom to give authorities if they have the data and the understanding, not opinion, not whim, and I don't have time. What will make this problem go away? Sort of decision making. There is, Jessica said it, there is good policy out there. I don't think it's attended to or well understood. And I guess one of the things and I'll quit after this comment, the thing that makes me most strategically impatient is when my PCSI team bumped into you, Lamarck, and your team at the Association of Defense Communities Conference, and we discovered mission alignment with what you do, with what we do. We formed a working group. And when we formed the working group, we brought in Dr. Tony Hill, 20 years of academic research on the EFMP program not improving. I'm going to end with this. The EFMP program, the EFMP has been around since the early 80s. The 2025 version is better. It is not good enough. And so I think we address the dynamic tension of, what about this problem? Oh, that's Defense Health Agency. What about that problem? Oh, that's a Marine thing. I mean, we can do better with a shared understanding of the problem. And we aim to, our little working group, we aim to establish that shared understanding and shop it anywhere we can. So back to you, buddy.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if you can't tell, this panel wants to get something done. And Tony, I'm glad you mentioned the working group. This is a positive for me. We're seeing now collaborators, retired, active duty, senior leaders, TRICARE folks. We're also seeing providers come to the table and say, hey, we would love to serve the military more. Here are our constraints in the system. And so again, this webinar is just the beginning of a much more sustained push and conversation. And Tony, you mentioned Dr. Hill. I would love to have her on. I think that would be a great session just to talk about what that literature review revealed and what are the things that we can learn from it. But I also want to mention the chat is on fire. So many great stories are being shared right now. Tony, you just got a couple of call outs. I am seeing friends of mine, people that are co-collaborators in this chat. And I'm also seeing people I don't know who are sharing your lived experience as an EFMP member in your respective branch of service, and all of that matters. And so we have covered a lot of ground on this webinar. Sadly, we cannot stay on here for 3 hours. One, because my voice won't hold out because of these allergies in Central Texas here, which is why I'm drinking lots of water. So hopefully I'm not coughing at you and I'm talking to you. But now that we've covered all these bases, I really are, when all these data points, different sets of dynamic tension, different lived experiences, we've seen some of the positive things. Here's the question is what have we not talked about on this call that each of you would like to talk about? And I really think for me, all roads lead to retention and readiness. These are buzzwords we hear all the time. It depends on which administration and how they're used and who is in the mix. But look, we get it. And Randy, maybe we start with you because you literally just talked about how that affects your decision to stay in and continue to serve or get out. And I personally have talked to so many stakeholders. I am a pilot, so I talk to a lot of pilots. And it is not inexpensive for the Air Force to train a pilot or a linguist or a whole bunch of other jobs. And when those people look at me and go, I freaking love what I do every day, and I would stay in forever if I could, but my family is tapping out. Share these perspectives. What have we not talked about? How does it relate to readiness or retention? Or are we just trying to tie that together with some loose string and it really doesn't matter to the actual fighting force and to our capabilities on the daily within each branch of service? So, Randy, I'm going to put you on the spot and let you go first.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mark. There's so much I could cover here, but I think mission readiness is like we've been harping on that a lot and really not um dove down into like the specifics of that. For me, I ended my career, as a career field manager. So I basically ran my career field, which was one of the smallest in the Air Force. So we only had about 120, 130 billets globally. So when you think of that perspective in a small scale, we had roughly 42% of our personnel that were coded. Now, that's not just the EFMP. It could be, a code for a specific assignment, where you have to stay there for 4 years because you're working for a combat support agency. But regardless, those codes prevented, mobility of personnel. So if you were to stand up a new, a commander like Tony was to stand up a new um, mission in another quadrant of the world, then we could not fill it as quickly as needed, and that lack of flexibility makes us not as lethal as the military strives to be. So for us, it was frustrating, especially on the Air Force side, because there are policies, especially in the assignment lanes. They try their best to get volunteers, for those assignments. So often what you would see is commanders frustrated because they could not get a person to fill those billets, or worse off, they'd have to non-volunteer somebody, which is also a retention issue because people will turn those down and get out if they don't want to leave because of their own specific situation. And that left commanders with a void in a capability, especially when that capability was very niche. And that's kind of where the mission readiness impacts the overall capability and employment of force that a commander has at their disposal. So I do think we need to be a little bit more deliberate with those processes to make sure, especially we're taking more time, and the data, like you said, is presented way beforehand when these assignment decisions are made. So we have less of the volunteer versus non-volunteer actions happening.
Yeah, what a great perspective. And I want to riff off of it, but I'm not going to because it'll take us down a different path. But that is so true. And what I hear you saying is, hey, Lamarck, it matters to the mission, right? It matters to the mission. Tony, can I pull you in at this point? I mean,
Yeah.
speaking of, you're a very mission driven person. As I've gotten to know you internally, when I'm sure when you were in service, and now that you are doing something in the civilian world and a soldier for life outside of the service, can you talk to us about why this matters? Does it really matter, or is that just a myth that we're trying to tie things together with some loose string?
No, it absolutely matters on two levels. One, everything Randy spoke about. Pardon me. We've got to, forgive me.
Yeah, I can
It's a war
sympathize.
for talent. It's a war for talent out there, and
Yeah.
all the services are competing for the best in the nation. And so, in order to retain that talent, you've got to have systems, assignment systems, support systems that want people to stay. This is an all volunteer force, and it is perishable. The other aspect that we don't talk about much is the culture of the United States Armed Forces. I mean, we say mission first, people always. There's always going to be that tension, but the people always part has to be backed up by what you say is what you do and is what you prioritize. And by having a strong EFMP program, the EFMP, you'll be backing up what you're saying, and you'll be building the culture that, yes, they have my back, they will take care of me. And I that is an unspoken thing, hard to describe, that is so important for an all volunteer force. And there's a, let me finish with this, and this is I really hesitate saying this, but I know there are corners of the military, and certainly people outside the military, who say something horrible like, well, if they have a special needs child, they shouldn't be in. And you never hear that spoken out loud, but I know it's there, it's underlying. And and I offer to you that as besides being ridiculous, disgusting, and horrible, I offer to you that I can't tell you the number of soldiers, officers, and enlisted who had children late in their marriage who had special needs. I'm thinking of a major right now that had a child with multiple diagnoses, and I did not want to lose that guy. The Army didn't want to lose that guy. That was a future commander. The former chairman of the board of PCSI, is a retired 4-star general, who went through his entire company grade and field grade years with a child with exceptional special needs. And he became the Southcom commander. Why would you chance losing talent like that? And so it's a key element of the culture, as well as just simple readiness. Back to you, Mark.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Tony. All right. Chuck, you want to go next, or oh, Jessica's got her hand up. Man, I'm not a very good host, I think, but people have to put their hand up. The bad side. Jessica, hop in here. Get on in here and let us know your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I'm getting all excited over here. I'm sorry. I want to piggyback on that with something that I feel like I need to foot stomp a little bit. It is wonderful that we are a service, a country that backs its people up. I want that for us too. Also, the Exceptional Family Member Program issues are not just some families can't find a doctor for their kids. They include that, but they are not limited to that. The Exceptional Family Member Program is found over and over, as you mentioned, Lamarck, to be a leading indicator for the issues that pain all service-connected families. So when we look at exceptional families as a unit, we see impact not just to healthcare, we see impact on education and parents unable to find adequate, free, appropriate public education. We see impact to childcare, parents unable to find adequate, high quality, affordable childcare for their kids. We see impact to nutrition and housing and spousal employment. And we see those in greater numbers because these families connect with more systems than a typical military connected family. We see that first. We hear them talking about those pain points first. That does not mean they don't exist for every military connected family. And if you look at the rates of spousal unemployment or underemployment, you will see immediately what I mean. This isn't just about exceptional families. It is about every family. And bringing the talents and the indicators of those enrolled in the exceptional family member program to bear to better serve military connected families across the board and do a better job of retaining those service members with high levels of skill across the board, whether they have Q-coded dependents or don't.
Well said, and could not agree more. Chuck, I'm going to let you have the last word on this.
Yeah, just piggybacking on what everyone has already said, definitely an impact on readiness, retention, obviously recruiting. We struggle to, bring in servicemen and women who, don't have issues, let alone, members in the EFMP program. It also impacts, and to Tony's point, you are labeled, it impacts assignments, which impacts promotions. We know that we've got 250,000 people in the program, but we also don't know who's not even enrolled in the program because they don't want to be labeled. They don't want to impact promotion. They don't want to impact assignments, which puts a strain on the system because if we don't know who's in the program, then we can't navigate the schools, the education pieces of it, the medical piece of it. Those things are all very, very important. And personally, I experienced it as well. My wife got out of the Air Force early. She retired early because we have a special needs son. So again, the experiences not only of the senior leader in the DoD, but also having a special needs son and being a military spouse, I can tell you that there is a myriad of problems. So we have to use the information that we have to make change. That's the only way. That's the best way of putting this, Lamarck. And I don't know how much time we have left on wrapping this up, but use the data, make informed decisions, and we can make improvements to this program. We've already made improvements to this program, but we can do better.
Well said, and I agree. So, how much time do we have? Well, unfortunately, we don't have unlimited time, but I do want to get to some questions. So, if y'all will stay around here for 10 minutes, we're going to take questions. I can tell you, there is no way that we're going to get to every question. How do I know? Because I'm looking at the chat stream right now and the Q&A stream, and it is robust, for sure, to say the least. And so, I just want to say to all of you, thank you for sharing. I've already got invitations in the chat of, hey, I'm doing something in this space. We have a work group at this base. Hey, we're looking at childcare. I see Michelle Norman on here, good friend of mine. She's got great data on this. We want to collaborate with you. And thank you all so much. Your time is valuable. I get that. Everybody on this panel is busy. Trust me. And they've taken their time to talk about this because they care. And so thank you for taking time to listen to this webinar. Lots more to come over the next 3 years. This is going to be a sustained effort. So thank you for being part of that conversation. Tony, you're getting a shout out from Fort Stewart right now. So there you go.
Rock of the Mar.
All right. So let's take our first question. It's a doozy. So we don't have to all respond to each question. But so I'm gonna kind of direct this where I think it should go, and we'll get after it there. But there's a little bit of a question that's just very direct. It's a type of question that I would say, like, hey y'all, basically, I'm paraphrasing this question, and I'm not going to call out who said it because I don't want to. I did not ask for permission, but basically, this is all great. We know there's challenges in the program. Why does this working group matter? And why does data matter? So I have lots to say on this, but I'm the host. So Tony, I think I'm going to point to you and say, why is it that you came to me and others and started saying, hey, why aren't we sharing information? Why aren't we talking? Why aren't we working? What is that working group thing? And why does it matter? Is it just another thing that's going to fade away into the distance and nothing changes and it's not actionable? I think that's something. You're a person of action, I know.
I got
So
you.
I'm going to let you take that one.
No. Okay. Why does the working group matter? You have assembled, we have assembled a nucleus that can connect to all other groups and engage and share. But we have a nucleus of an action-oriented team that includes individuals who have served at the highest levels of the policy and senior civilian level, individuals who have led large formations and commanded bases, and most importantly, recent relevant parental experience of individuals in the program, and then a variety of and then I'm sorry, the secret weapon is hands-on a data gathering capability in feedback, Lamarck's feedback, and software as a service in Lamarck's Care Starter, and it all came together at one point in time last April, and we've been working on this for a year, and we think we've got what we need to start getting airspeed and altitude. So this, I would offer, this working group is different. We have our eyes at the top. We're looking for a top-driven, bottom-up, refined solution to improving the program. And I just think, summary, I think we got the right talent at the right time with the right amount of energy and an absolutely no quit attitude. Because all of us have operated, at least the senior folks here, not the youngsters, but the senior folks here have operated and pushed against the wall of bureaucracy, which can move, but you just got to keep pushing. And so we just think we got the right folks and the right academic support.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer to a question that I'm dying to answer. Who else wants to chime in? Why does it matter? Like, anybody want to talk about that in any other way? Anybody have anything to add? Going once. I'm like an auctioneer now.
Lamarck, you just go, man. Go ahead. Come on.
Okay. Randy, you got something for us? You look like you're ready.
Yeah, I just want to add to, because I saw a question floated in the chat as well about, what are your experiences in addressing these problems with, high levels of leadership within, the various services in the Pentagon, and it harps on data, right? And I think you
Yeah.
just have to be transparent in highlighting how it's truly impacting A, the families, and B, the mission, right? And that's the type of data that you have to drive it home with. And I know, at least for my service when I was in, we were very focused on accessions and retentions, right? That was a main problem set for us, specifically into very specific skill sets that are hard to acquire in the first place. But the problem for us was always money, manpower. Those are always hurdles that we had to get overcome. But I do think there's some good things going on. And like the Army specifically, I reached out to a friend of mine yesterday who's still serving, whose husband was in the Army. She's Air Force, and she opted not to get Q coded, because the Army was doing the process better. So, and the fact that they were involved and they were managing it, he had annual EFMP updates for their child. That's something that she knew as a member that was better for their family, and that it could get them to the places together if they wanted to be. So I think for us, we just need to be take those good wins, replicate them across the services, so we can keep the talent in place and give families the option to continue to serve, like Tony said, because everybody wants to serve. They raise their right hand, and we want to be there. So, but yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I think that's great. And we got a follow-up question in the chat that I'm going to throw to Chuck. So, Chuck, we've talked about why does it matter? Why does the working group, like, what is the working group going to do that's different? But I got a follow-up question like, hey, does anybody on the panel have experience with advocating with leaders, like senior leaders? How do we get senior leaders lined up and aligned across branches to say, and maybe across the halls of Congress, and you spend a lot of time with senior leaders talking to them about all sorts of things from food transformation to EFMP. I know you've been passionate about a lot of other areas of quality of life. why does it matter, and how do we advocate and get senior leaders fired up around this? Can you take that one for me?
Yeah, I think obviously we need the senior leaders. We need the services on board, for this change. Change is hard. Whenever you talk about transforming something or reforming something in a service or the DoD, it's extremely hard. You get a lot of pushback. I've led so many transformation efforts in the DoD, and none were easy. I'm still leading them today as a retired DoD exec. But change is hard. But I think, Lamarck, we need the services on board, because even if we work with Congress, which we are today on this particular initiative, we're going to need language. We're going to need language that will help bring change, the change that we're talking about, to order. And this is, it's moving this Titanic, one, nautical mile at a time. And we have to be able to do that methodically, and we're going to need DoD support on this. There's no other way to do this, right? Congress, even when Congress has language, they have legislation in place, and you get pushback from the DoD or the services, it makes all of this difficult. So we have to work closely with the department. We have to continue to work with Congress to be able to impact this change.
Yeah,
Spot on.
totally agree.
Relentless engagement, small victories. Just seek small victories as you go on the relentless engagement track. But it's going to take time and constant pressure.
Yeah, totally agree. And with that, I am going to just say some very sad words, which is we are out of time. Now, look, everyone who has put something in the chat, I see you. I hear you, and I'm going to be following up with you, because I want to meet and connect with anyone who is actively engaged. And I don't care if it's internally, you're an internal stakeholder, you're working on policy, you're a family, you're a member of Congress. I know we have a couple of offices in here. Thank you for coming and taking your time. But we want to connect with you. We are building not just a universe of data, but we're building a universe of collaborators. And I just want to say thank you to Tony, who really put together the EFMP working group. And I'll tell you why. I am in a lot of meetings on a monthly basis, and that's an understatement. And anybody on my team will tell you that's an understatement. And a lot of those meetings are with pretty cool people, and they're exciting, and I'm glad that I'm there. But if I'm being honest, they're not exactly energizing. And every single time I have come to an EFMP work group, I leave that room saying to myself, how can I spend more time with people like this who want to get after changing systems and helping families and pushing those standards higher and higher, and not just settle into a status quo? And that is what the work group has meant to me. And I can tell from the chat that many of you on this call are also in that boat, and we want to connect with you. Some of you have organizations that have data sets. We would love to collaborate and bring those into a very public facing data set. There's going to be a lot more that we're going to talk about. But if you'll do me a favor, if you're interested in staying in touch, so we're going to have an event coming up here in a couple more months, and it's going to keep happening. And so we're going to be talking about and exploring different things. We also would like to hear more about your work and take that in, and how we can support you. Many of you have organizations that clearly are doing something. We want to make sure we're aware of that. I know I've got a trip to Utah coming up. Talk to Utah at ADC. They're doing some really cool things. I am looking to come see what you're doing. I want to engage fully with you. So if you'll go to this link, there's a quick form you can fill out. We have your contact information, but if you want to kind of be included and say, hey, Lamarck, I'm raising my hand. I'm like you. I want to get after this. I want to contribute. I want to see more data. I want to engage more stakeholders and be supportive of what needs to happen to make this a better situation for EFMP and beyond EFMP, the total force. And I really do think that's the key learning for us is if we'll keep having this conversation, commit to excellence, and collaborate with people who really do want to see change, not just put a bunch of hot air in a room and you want to leave excited. That's an open invitation to you. This is not a secret club. We want you to be a part. So with that, I'm going to close out the webinar. Panelists, thank you so much for your time, for your expertise. And I think the only sad part for me is I know we've just scratched the surface of some of these issues. And definitely we had probably at least 13 more questions that we aren't going to have time to answer, but we will take that and to the next iteration of content. We're going to look at, hey, we got a lot of questions about this. Maybe we do a pull-out session or a special session just on that and bring in expertise. And some of you in the chat right now may be on that panel. Thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday. And again, let's not stop innovating and supporting reform and strengthening of mission readiness. Let's all get in the fight and do it together. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time in a think tank or a session or a piece of content. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great one.